Welcome to another exciting episode of Working in Tech. Today, we're chatting with Bree, a software engineer turned developer advocate at HubSpot, who helps developers build with more confidence and independence. The developer advocate role is one that's very interesting. It's emerging. A lot of multi-billion-dollar companies are leaning into it more and more. And today, I really want to dive into what that role is. What part of it is community support, what part of it is technical, what part of it is educative, and what are the specific skills that set someone up for success in this role. And today, we're blessed to have someone who can share that knowledge and help us all learn and level up. Welcome to the show, Bree.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
We're having such a really uplifting conversation backstage that I almost want to bring back to the fore right away. So we're starting this very differently. One of the biggest challenges that we'll face, whether it's in career, content creation, any other journey that we're feeling, is just that feeling of being inadequate.
Yes.
And I don't think that, anyone feels that pressure much more than, people who I speak with, who a lot of the time are people who work in other industries trying to transition into tech in this very brutal job market. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
said something that I thought was very powerful. So I want to go back to it, right? It's like people will see like that really cool 1 minute content, not knowing it takes significant amount of time and like
Yes.
self-judgment and stuff to go through. Talk me through like what that looks like and how you navigate that.
Oh, absolutely. So, first off, I want to say that I also feel like I fall into this trap a lot. And we were also talking about people who are really ambitious and have really big ideas and constantly feeling like you're left behind, even when you're always giving like 100%. So, from the flip side of that, it can look like, because I like short form content personally right now, it can look like a video that I can do that's like a minute, and you might look at it and go, how did she do that so fast? Or like, I want to edit like she does, whatever it is. But what you don't see is that that 1 minute video took me an entire 8 hours to do between filming. Filming always takes me 3 times longer than what the actual video is, just from wanting to get the energy right or wanting to make sure that I'm saying the right thing. I do it a couple of different times. The first time you script it, but then you start, coming into the script and really realizing like how you want to say it or how you want to present information. Then, of course, there's mess ups and everything like that. Then, when you think about like the editing that goes into it, the SEO for making sure that the post has the right keywords and everything like that, the thumbnail, it's so interesting that we put a highlights reel on social media, and it's so easy to look at something and be like, oh my goodness, that's so cool, and not realize all of the work that went on behind the scenes.
That is so crucial that you said that because it's the entire theme behind this, right? Because I personally don't have anything against what I'm about to say. You see a lot of people who share, the day in the life video,
Mhm.
what Google, or how tech has transformed their lives to giving them this really amazing, lifestyle where they now have this really cool, things and all this nice things that they have, which is great. But it takes a lot of grind, and this specific
Yes.
podcast helps you understand what it actually takes on the back end. We do have a lot of shout outs for you, Bree, so we have to come back and get those shout outs. First one is from Roxy.
Roxy, my favorite. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of love in the comment. You guys keep it coming. I definitely want to keep this uh, engaging and exciting. So please keep sending the love, and all the work is so really appreciated. Absolutely. And those day in the lives videos are hard. That's even the funny thing, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
look. It's not as effortless as it looks, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember trying to do one of those, and I was like, they have the aesthetic down, they have the storyline down, they have the angles of catching different things. I remember the very first time I tried to do it, and I was just holding the camera around for the day, and I was like, "Why does mine not look the same?" It's because for every single thing they do, they are catching it from 3 or 4 different angles, doing it, setting it up again, doing it and setting it up again to make sure that there's, like, fluid motion, and that's what's really catching our eye.
Absolutely. And it's like there's also one element that most people don't realize is that people spend a lot of time getting those things down, right? And it's
Yes.
like if you don't know, you think I could just do that. Like anybody could
Oh,
just
yeah.
do that. And I think it comes back to the original point, right? Because or at least my origin question that I usually ask on a podcast. Why did you go into software engineering?
Ooh, for me, it was video games and wanting to customize things. That was my entryway. I love The Sims 2, and I wanted to figure out how to make mods for the game. That was I don't want to say how long ago it was, but The Sims 2 is definitely an older game. But understanding or even being exposed to seeing that people were able to make modifications like to textures or appearances or just make the game function differently. I was like, oh my gosh, how can I do that? And I remember going on like a forum and people were like sharing their mods, and I opened up a file and I was like, oh my God, I have no clue what this is, but it got me interested. And I was like, ooh, what does this actually do?
You touch on something that I've seen so much, like, and it's interesting because, even being a yes, Sims,
Yes.
even being a product manager, right? One of the things that I've always found to be super interesting with user interviews, for example, is by the time you talk to 10 users, you start to see a theme appear, right?
Mhm.
Like you start to, it's almost like they all kind of like had a meeting and all say this is our frustration. Whereas that's not what's happening. It's just that like those patterns may not seem obvious to you at all to begin with. And it's
Mhm.
the same. It's like curiosity is such a important ingredient of
Yes.
why people get into tech. And that's one thing I never want to get lost on people. Of course,
Mhm.
come for the money, come for the free snacks, right?
The free
Come for
snacks.
all the perks that come with it, right? Come for the RSUs, but you can't leave out the curiosity. Like
Yeah.
what that leads to is a lot of frustration. And the second piece of what you
Yes.
said that I thought is super important also is just that sheer desire, right? Because
Mhm.
without that, you will find that that learning journey is a lot more frustrating, right? Just because
Yeah.
there's so much to learn. So in terms of how you were able to build, this right skill set to be able to do what you're doing, what was that journey like?
So I think something that's important, and you touched on it just now, is anchoring to your why. Regardless of what that why is, especially if you want to transition to a technical role, you got to hold on to it and you got to hold on to it tight and you got to keep it close to your chest and always remember. Because while I started because I was curious about gaming, I never did make my mod. I did not end up learning how to do that in the game, but it did prompt me to take my first programming class, which was Java. And Java was a steep learning curve for me, but it opened like a whole brand new realm of things that I didn't even know that I could do with computers. So it sort of like branched off where I was interested in one thing and curious, and that curiosity just like spurred off and allowed me to explore other things. But the thing that has been constant through the journey that I've been on, regardless of what I'm learning or what technology it is having a curiosity state of mind, but also trying to figure out like where am I going or like how am I going to use the technology, not just at work, but like is there something that I can relate it to that's personal that like makes it a little bit more fun for me? And that's usually what keeps me going.
That is so key, and I'm gonna come back to that. But again, we've been getting a lot of love from Roxy, so we got to bring it
Yeah.
back. And think about how much of it is staged. Absolutely, the thing that actually gets me the most is how good, like somebody's making coffee, and it's like the camera's not even there, right? Like it's
Yeah.
just so neat, so nice, so everything just comes out. I've given up on that for the most part. Yeah, with the editing too, I do agree, and then. Wow, this is great. Yeah. Shout out to I don't know if we're doing any advertisement shout outs, but yeah, thanks for the shout outs. I actually got booted into getting my mic because someone in my comments one time said that my audio wasn't coming clean enough. So now I'm at
Oh.
Breeze level.
No, listen, I got this one recently because I was like, I the thing that stops me from recording a lot of times is inconvenience. It was inconvenient for me to pull out a mic and like get recording. That was like one of the barriers. So I got like a mic arm and I got a new mic and I was like, you know what? That I can't use that as an excuse anymore because it's already here on the desk. All I got to do is turn it on and hit the button.
It's so interesting how much of creation is eliminating excuses.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
And I think that, it's so interesting. Maybe that's the next question. To succeed in tech, how much is it important to remove the barriers against your success?
Very. I think there's always gonna be barriers. I think even when we think about things like education, you can consider whether you have the ability to attend secondary education, regardless of not whether you think it's a scam, not a scam, or whether you want to pursue secondary education. That can be a big barrier because while people may not believe that the curriculum in universities and colleges is super integral or important to getting you a job, it does allow you access to things like career advice, where you have direct access to people who can critique your resume or give you that feedback immediately. Professionals who, in theory, have worked in the field for some point in time, where you can go and ask them your technical questions. Things like internships. Internships aren't usually available to people who are not students of like a college or a university kind of program. So that can be a barrier, and if you can't get over that barrier, you're going to have to figure out other ways to get around it. And I think the same can be said for a lot of different other aspects. Maybe your learning style, you have to figure out what your learning style is. Maybe you're not a read everything kind of person. Maybe you're more of a video person. How are you going to get over that hump of, hey, I have to read documentation, and that is like a really big part of the job and something that I have to do in order to learn and to use new products. It's figuring out where you start coming up with your excuses, or where you start bowing out, or where you start to draw back a little bit, acknowledge it, and then figure out how you're going to get around it, or how you're going to accommodate yourself in order to be able to push through those.
You know what is so beautiful about what you said is what I think is going to be the biggest differentiator in the next 10 years, right? Um, you know, I've not been diagnosed for ADHD, but I do feel like
Mhm.
I have a lot of symptoms of it. And
Mhm.
one of the hacks that I found, 2 years ago when I was trying to, no, it was maybe a little longer than that, when I was trying to start to read a lot more books, was that I realized that I struggled to be still in the same moment. Uh, just consuming information. So one of the
Mhm.
hacks that I did was I will play a video game and then I would have my uh, audiobook app out listening because that was the only way, like my eyes were stimulated, but my mind was in a calm state where I could then learn. Right. And I
Mhm.
found that to be super effective for me in learning. That's just a hack. And I think you can literally hack your way to anything else in this world because before, like somebody put me on to that library card um
Yes.
gimmick. Like you could just go get it. I'm like, wait, for free, I could get a free library card. He's like, yeah, any
Yeah.
city you're in. And then put me onto this app called Libby. And then that
Yes.
way I got that combo and I could read any book in the world. Like it blew my mind. So
Yes.
it's like you wouldn't always have it set up to where it works the way exactly you want it to, but you can always have a situation where you can optimize for what you want. And just like you said,
Absolutely.
projects is the same way. Like maybe some people can easily get internships, but if you can't, can you build projects? If you think about it, what is the person who's doing projects doing? They're getting
Mhm.
experience. And
Exactly.
when the job says, oh, we need a year, 2 years of experience, don't forget, they didn't say W-2 experience. They just said
Mhm.
experience. And I think that's where
Exactly.
a lot of people get it wrong. It's like, oh, I've not had a job before, so I don't have experience. Wrong. If you've done it before, you have experience.
Mhm, and that's why building, your portfolio, or even, just, like, working on tangible projects from the beginning is so important. And Roxy threw in the chat that somebody said that their bachelor's degree was all about networking, and had I known the differences between what I would experience learning on my own versus what I would learn in college, I definitely would have done a lot more networking when I was in school. But overall, figuring out like those avenues, and like you were saying, getting over listening to audiobooks and things like that. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and the beauty of it now that I found is like my drive to soccer, which is something that I do multiple times a week, could easily be anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes each way. Guess what I'm doing? So like I'm compounding knowledge every single time I'm on the way. Like and it's easy to do. Like I'm not even doing anything else. I could just concentrate
You
and
know what?
learn.
I heard the term recently called habit stacking. And the concept is, for instance, when you are cleaning your house. Your habit stacking would be cleaning and listening to your audiobook or even listening to a tech podcast because I've heard of a quite a few good tech podcasts that come out fairly regularly. So that's also another way of like passive learning as well, to just have it on sort of like in the back of your brain where you don't have to put all of your time and energy into consumption, but it's like it's passive consumption. You're still getting everything out of it.
Yeah. And one of those podcasts is Working in Tech. We do it once every week.
Yeah.
Shameless plug right there. You set it up. I had to put it in.
Take it. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
but the beauty of all of that, oh yeah, I gotta get this. Oh snap, W2 experience. Yep, doesn't have to be. I guess and I think that's the biggest theme around what we just talked about is there's a game and there's a game behind the game. I
Yes.
think what a lot of people don't catch is that game. It's like there's almost an act for every single thing, right? Is for example, your experience doesn't have to be, um, it doesn't have to be paid.
Right.
Your learning doesn't have to be like the hiring manager doesn't care that you learn SQL at Harvard or at Free Code Camp. It's
Mhm.
if we give you this coding problem, can you solve it? Do you know how to
Exactly.
do it? So it's
It's
like
the outcomes.
it's the outcomes. Are you outcome driven? Can you get the results? And we're living in a time where that gets more important every single time. Guess what? How I learned about Abby stacking as well. Reading one of those books. What's it called? Anyway, it's a book about habits. I can't really remember, but same thing. Listening to an audiobook, right? And that you can learn laundry. You're on fire, Roxy.
Yes.
Commuting, learning, laundry, and podcast. Absolutely. Like there's so many amazing things that you can combine together just to get more. It's funny when people always say like, we have the same 24 hours. No, some people know how to get more out of
Exactly.
it.
You have to be really strategic when you have so many things that you wanna do and, like, so many things that you wanna accomplish, especially now since a lot of us are spending more time learning about AI and having to, like, upskill a little bit more and trying to figure out where we're getting that time from in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for helping me out, Natalie. She could see I was struggling there. Atomic Habits. Yep, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah, a great, great read. I think if you're building a tech career or building anything important for any reason, I think that's a book that you should read because it's so interesting to me now that I've almost like looking at life through that lens,
Mhm.
how much amazing things that we can do or that we can or cannot do in life just because of the habits that we build, right?
Right.
And if we build the right habits, we'll get the right outcomes out of it. Typically, is the way it
Absolutely.
works. So going back, because I've just gotten excited in all these different directions that we've gone in, but going back to like software engineering, which was a pathway to DevRel, uh,
Yes.
talk me through like that journey figuring out Java and what did it lead to?
Ooh, so Java led me to realize that I actually don't like Java. I didn't realize that I didn't like Java too much until I used other languages. But I will say Java was my entryway into realizing that I could be creative and it doesn't just mean on paper. So I had a lot of friends who were very artistic and they were able to draw and paint and all this. I can't do that. Like I have all kinds of markers, but you're going to get doodles from me. It's not going to be anything super crazy. So when I started programming in Java, the first thing that I started to do once I learned conditionals was choose your own adventure stories because I really enjoy writing. So I was like, oh my goodness, I can make these stories and I can put them in the console and people can just click their way through and like have these cool paths and see this journey. And that was one of the very first moments I was like, I got a dopamine rush from programming. And then almost every single time after that, it was like, well, how do I get back to that? And then it turned into my code is working. And that's the feeling that I get again. And then it turned into I'm not actively searching for this feeling. It just happens when I'm working on something for a long time and maybe I didn't understand it. Something like recursion. Recursion was really hard for me. But then once I got it and once it finally clicked, that was a happy that I didn't know existed from me. So I ended up going to college, and I got to try a lot of different programming languages, which is how I then realized that I like JavaScript more than Java, and also like front end development more, because that was another level of creativity. So college for me, it came, it went. I didn't do a lot of projects, which led to me not being able to find a job right after school. There's a lot of differences between like secondary education, what you think it should do for you versus like what it actually did. And I started college in 2012 before we had a lot of the resources that we have now about what you should look for in a degree program, or hey, you need to start learning Git, or like maybe doing projects. The classes that I was taking just naturally weren't project driven. They were more so driven in terms of giving us the knowledge and education. So, and I didn't know that. Hindsight is always 2020 though, but it's okay. So,
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna go a little controversial now. Is the CS degree cooked?
ooh, you know
Spicy,
what?
right?
That is spicy. I When people ask that question, my immediate thought is to ask more questions. Are you going to school because you think it is a happy path to a job? Because if so, that's not going to get you the immediate job that you're looking for. Are you going to college because you aspire to have secondary education, which was the thing for me? Like I've always wanted a college degree. That was what was important to me. Or are you looking for very, very structured education? Because if so, you can get that very structured education style elsewhere without having to pay tuition and a lot of money. Are you looking for networking or community? Because there are a ton of places where you can get that online, and COVID isn't, as crippling to us anymore. So there's a lot more in-person events, providing that you live in any version of a city or a town, or if you don't have a coding community, start your own. There are more than likely people who are willing to like learn with you, or even just like have community. So all that to say, when people say, is it cooked? It depends on what you want to achieve from it.
Okay, let her cook. um, and to be honest, I think that is the fair assessment that I've gotten. Is that, of course, I'm not a CS degree person myself, so I can only speak so much to it. But it almost feels like, to your earlier point, and maybe the sad part is not many people are equipped to know that, because you
Yeah.
went in, right, knowing what you were excited about, getting that degree. So all of the extras that people expect, for example, like it's actually really going to prepare me for the job. It's going to teach me all the things that I need to know. It doesn't do that, unfortunately, right? So I
Yes.
wish, more people knew that upfront, right? So they could build a lot of that muscle that they need to build, right? But unfortunately, that's not what's happening many times in these cases. And Roxy said something that I thought was really important the first time, but I didn't want to miss that question, is choose your own adventure. And I think that that's the biggest thing. So turning that into my next question, then it's like, how important is tying your purpose to what you want to do in tech? And the second B part, or the part B or side B of that question, is how then does someone know what their purpose is?
Mm. I think your purpose isn't a destination. I think your purpose is a journey. Because as you learn, and as you learn more, not only technologically, but learn more about yourself, learn how you're learning, learn what fascinates you, what drives your curiosity. Just like me, your original goal or your original purpose might change. I wanted to start with games. I never did make my mod, but it led me to other things. So I think having a vision of what you would like to do, or a semblance of a purpose, is very important. Are you trying to, for instance, I am trying to learn more about AI because I think that it is important, but also looking at the job market for people who are specifically front end engineers, those roles are on the decline specifically. So if I want to, I wouldn't say future proof, but if I want to put myself in the best position in the future to be able to be gainfully employed in a way that I would like to be, that means taking on new skills. Now, what's going to get me through this journey is not just, okay, I have to learn AI and I have to learn machine learning and like or learn how this works. How can I use it? How can it help me with what I'm doing? What is my overall end goal? And I think it would be to demystify a lot of what we see or what we know about AI and make it more approachable. So that for me is my purpose. And if that's my purpose, that's going to drive me to keep learning as much about it as I can so that I can help other people on their journeys as well. Somebody else's journey might be a little bit different where they want to maybe get a specific role, or maybe they want a role that pays a certain amount of money. Whatever that purpose is, even if it does change, I think it's important to have along your journey.
That is so key in the way that you said that, right? The finding that purpose is one of the biggest things, because forget even getting to the destination of learning the skill.
Hmm.
Even going through the journey of it just becomes a lot more enjoyable. And there's
Yes.
something that you said about that feeling, right? It's like, let's say, for example, you care so much about baking, right? It's
Hmm.
like, whether it's like, oh, you know what, I make this quirky recipes that I want to put together, but I don't want to build this website by myself. So I want to vibe code it. I want to learn about Cursor. I want to learn about all of these different tools. You'll find that the joy that you derive from putting that together makes you beast through that learning. Because at the end of the day, you're thinking, no, I need this thing to work this way. And that becomes more important than the difficulty of, because at that point, it's like, get out of my way. Let me just get there.
Yeah.
But if it's like, oh, I need to learn it because I need to learn it, you don't
Yes.
get that natural urgency out of it, right?
Hmm.
It's not as, and I find this happens so many times. Like, I could be having a random conversation with someone on WhatsApp, and the amount of research I could do in 10 minutes on stats and things like that. Like, just because I want to be right with this person. And this is a completely
Yes.
meaningless conversation. Like, it's not going to lead to anything meaningful, but I'm so invested. And I think that's the key part. It's like, figure out the things that get you invested. Those will change from time
Yes.
to time. But the goal is, what are you learning along the way, right? Is the thing. I almost remember a joke when I said that, when the acquisition, sorry, I'm just gonna quickly make this joke.
Yeah, go
When the
ahead.
acquisition of this is a windsurf fell
Oh,
through,
yes.
they
Yeah.
said, it's like they're not getting any stocks and bonuses, that it seems like all the thing that's there for the employees is just the friends they made along the way.
You know what? It's like that sometimes. But that's another crazy thing. Like
Yeah.
looking in tech today and seeing that people or like employees of companies are being traded like baseball cards from like one company to the other, or like it's a draft. I don't do a lot
Yep.
of sports, but
Yeah.
mhm.
It's completely flipped. Like, we were having this. So of course, I'm part of like multiple different communities, and one of the VC communities I'm a part of was talking about like just the impact that this will have on like hiring talent to like early stage startups, and how this whole thing can damage that. Because if your upside in going to a new job is, oh, you know what, when we eventually get that exit, potentially I'm going to be made whole, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden your CEO literally jumps ship.
Yeah.
Like, that changes everything, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's like, what are we even doing?
Honestly, that's it. That's how I felt about a lot of the industry. Like, what are we doing? Where did
and
we
it's
go?
and it's funny because there's so many things that were like conventional wisdom, right? Like, a company getting acquired for $13 billion, like, that never happens, but
No.
in this era. And the wildest part about that is, like, the acquisition had nothing to even do with the company. They're literally buying an employee for $13 billion. Like,
Mhm.
how? But
Yeah.
that just shows the scale of what's to come. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Absolutely. No, no, no. I was just gonna say, like, when you really think about it, it's hard for us to quantify 13 billion with a B, not hundreds of million, even hundreds of millions. Sometimes, if you really think about it, it's already hard to quantify. 13 billion.
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
Yeah, yeah. Like, if we really took the time to break it down, like, it's, there's a Nigerians tend to be very exaggerative in the way they say things. One of it, if a Nigerian reporter would say that, they'll probably say unprintable amounts of money.
Honestly, that's true. How do you even look at that much? And yeah,
It is a lot. It is a lot. But back to like the impact of talent in this AI driven world, right? How do you see the role of engineers, developer, DevRel, and roles like that in this world where it's almost like doom and gloom when it comes to like, oh, AI is going to take everybody's jobs. What's your take on that?
I don't think AI is going to take everybody's jobs. I am not turning a blind eye to already seeing that AI is coming for roles, but I do not believe that software engineers will be completely out of a job by
Mm,
any means like that. And I think that's what we see a lot on social media. I see all the time people say, "Why would you want to work on the thing that's going to take your job?" And the fact that that's not how that works.
mm,
So AI, it's good. It's gotten really good over the past 2 years, which has been really interesting in this industry to see. I remember being at Microsoft Build when Copilot was very first announced, and I was very skeptical. I was like, I don't really think it's going to come up with like all the answers. I don't know if I'm going to really use this as my pair programmer like every single day. And then a couple months passed and it got a lot better. And then about a year passed and I started using ChatGPT and I was like, "Oh, okay, well,
okay.
this is I see what you're doing. This is actually a little good." And one of the very first things I did when we got access to it at work was I started offloading test cases. I was like, write these and it got really good at it. And I was like, you
Mm,
know what? If I don't have to worry so much about test cases, that means that I can worry about something else and I'm able to get my PR out faster, everything like that. So I don't think it's coming for our jobs completely. I do think that it's changing our jobs. So there was what before when we had like front end engineers, back end engineers, and everything was a little bit more separated. Once we
mm,
started having full stack engineers, people started to say that's not really a role. You're kind of putting a team inside of one job role or like of one
mm,
person because a full stack engineer can work on the back end. In theory, they can work on the front end, they can do DevOps, they can do all of these different roles. And I think that's kind of what's happening with software engineering. So not
mm,
only do you have to understand how code works because you still need to know what's being generated by AI, but more so, you are becoming the architect. You are becoming the person who's putting systems together and managing how those things are connected. You are the project manager or the program manager where you are building like PRDs and specs, and they have to be to spec if you want AI to actually like help you and assist you with getting the right code output. But I think some areas where we really need to beef up our knowledge is security. Definitely, we want to make sure that we're still building things that are secure. We don't want to start exposing users to security bugs and things like that. So, but yeah.
It's so interesting that I was actually speaking at a mental big collective, shout out Chanel, yesterday, and we're talking about securing, data during migration and things like that. And that was something that came up, right? It's like security is like going to be a huge area of opportunity for the foreseeable future for those reasons. Like
Yeah.
security is so crucial to how companies build. It has many layers. Is it reputational, financial, operational, right? Like if your company's under attack, you not doing anything else until that stops, right? So there's so many opportunities, and I take your view as well. It's that um I think there's a lot of cynical things happening in tech right now. You're seeing companies declare record profits and at the same time lay off record number of employees. Um, and I'm really waiting to see like when that whole trend changes. But I don't think that that's a larger trend because again, I think the hype cycle around AI is a little bit overblown in my opinion, right? Like we've
Mhm.
had multiple layers of like technology induced job losses, whether that's in farming or like I don't know how many typists still exist today,
Mhm.
or people who operate certain types of machines. Like once the technology changes, people have to change along with it, right? It's
Yes.
the way it is. In fact, like when Epic, the healthcare software system came out, there was an entire industry born, right?
Mhm.
With Epic trainers, right? Scrum masters used to be the hardest thing in tech like 5, 6 years ago. Not so much anymore. Like many companies don't have scrum masters like they used to.
Mhm.
Even like, I see a lot more like DevOps roles, either like transition to like DevSecOps or like, more engineering being involved in that process. So we'll see that evolution. It'll be natural. And like people want to raise their fists up and say we're fighting the machine or whatever, right? I think what really gets to people is like when it almost feels like there's a vendetta and a championing of, oh, it's gonna take your jobs. It's gonna like slow down.
Yeah.
You seem a
I
little
think
too excited.
right. I think if anything, it's changing how we think about code. So, like for me as a developer advocate, one of the biggest mindset changes is I'm not just writing code for other developers to use and to learn from. I'm actively writing code and documentation that LLMs are going to be trained on and learn from in order to help other people. So it adds an additional layer of needing to be very specific and prescriptive with my examples and how I'm creating them, or even what kind of examples I'm using or generating to be able to help LLMs, which is something completely new that we haven't really done before.
Yep, absolutely. And you know what's even fascinating about what you just said is that I like again, it's so interesting how much you align on these topics is to some extent, I actually think we'll see more opportunity because if AI is truly this 10xer that we think it is, why do we think that there's going to be less opportunity? For example, some of the biggest trends I'm seeing is there's many more companies now hiring product managers than they used to. Why?
Hmm.
Because you almost need that human layer to think through how you're building products, how people are adopting it.
Yes.
You can't literally like, yes, you can give them a lot of tools to do their note taking, to do their documentation, to do all of these things. But you still need that human judgment. Who's making those balanced decision making? Because if you don't have that in the process, because again, like you rightly said, we're going to build for a lot of machines, but we still have to build for humans who are going to use it on the end user. And we have to think
Yes.
about them. We have to bring that perspective into consideration. And this, I feel like there's going to be so much more of that opportunity just because of what we create. Like 10, 20 years ago, DevOps wasn't so huge as it is now, right?
Hmm.
The entire CI/CD pipeline, this entire things that we now do just because the opportunity has become bigger and we've just taken it more seriously to where we're
Yes.
building layers and layers upon, you know, um, I'm looking for the right word, but it's like we're essentially building like failure prevention into the process just because of how thoughtful we're trying to be. And I think that is going to be similar trends with AI that I'll just almost feel like for the people who are overexcited, just let's take it down a notch,
No,
and
for
maybe
sure. And
including me because I'm also super excited.
I think one of the biggest human elements that I think about because I mostly do front end development.
Mm,
Sure, your website can, generate the website, it can generate your app for you,
mm,
but people like UX researchers and people that research those human elements of apps that make you want to continue using the app, whether it's a make or break. Think
mm,
about apps that you download and you use, maybe you use it like one time and you never go to it again. Maybe you had to do too many clicks to get to one, space, or maybe the flow is just not right. But in theory, it was generated correctly according to spec. There's so many human elements in psychology behind how we use things and what makes us want to use them that cannot be replicated just yet. I'm not going to say it'll never get there, but it can't do that right now. We
yeah.
still need humans.
Absolutely. And before we get to this next question by Natalie, really great question. It's even one of the tech CEOs said this, right? It's that a lot of the times when we think about what's possible, when we say one of the things that's possible with AI, the challenge is our realm of what we think is possible is limited by what's previously possible,
Mhm.
right? So when we add a layer of AI, the expectation is different. Like I was literally watching someone going through like an LLM demonstration using Grok 4 and how frustrated it was with like the level of content. Because we're now flush with content now, the sharpness that your content has to break through the noise is
Mhm.
way higher that even the higher AI has to learn at a higher rate to be able to produce that content. And
Yeah.
once it learns that, now there's a flush of that content. Guess what happens again? We have to create another layer
Hmm.
higher than that to be able to. So it's like there's always going to be a new job to be done, right?
Absolutely.
That then requires that new level and layer of thinking. But to get back to this first question, it says, um, Bree, what is the day to day of an advocate? Great question. Now,
So super good question. First part of the answer is it depends. And it mostly depends on what kind of developer advocate you are. So different companies require different things. So for me, I work on a team of multiple developer advocates, and we all sort of have our own platform of engagement, or I should say, a platform that we like post content on, and like a content style. So for me right now, I end up doing a lot of code samples. And that's why I like this role, because I still am very technical. That's one of the other big questions that I get is going from engineering to advocacy, what kind of or how much coding do I still do? And I would say that I still do a lot of coding during my job. But the thing that I like is I'm not specifically working on product work anymore. I'm trying to come up with ideas and ways to educate people, and to create code samples in order to help me do it. So that's what I do a lot. This past week, my job has looked like creating instructional YouTube videos for our HubSpot developers YouTube channel. And it's been interesting as a content creator who creates content like out on my own and seeing what the differences are when I'm creating like content for HubSpot and like what the process is like. A lot of it is first coding my app and like getting the idea out, or even before that, doing research and going out to our community to see what they're having trouble with, or if there's any way that I can expedite their learning or make something more clear or helpful to them, then coding the app. And then I realized like a couple of weeks ago, I am a whole video producer. And I don't know what made me come to this epiphany after having created content for 6 years. I think it was the fact that this video is like particularly long. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm having trouble seeing the end. But I really am the person who did the code sample, who scripted it, who filmed it, who did the editing, who did the SEO. Like it's all me. And for other teams or for other companies, it might be a little bit different. Other advocates might be more external facing, where
mm,
one of their big responsibilities is doing conferences or like going to events, whether it be locally or maybe some of the larger premier events. Or maybe they do like hackathons and community engagement style events. So I think there's a lot of responsibilities that you can have as a developer advocate, but that doesn't mean that you're responsible for all of them at one time.
that is so important. It's almost like you wear multiple hats. And how
Yeah.
did you make that transition from going from an engineer to becoming a developer advocate? And why did you even think that you had that in you to begin with?
Ooh, to me, I had to have somebody tell me that I could do it. I won't even lie, because if I had been doing the job myself with my own technical content for a while and I just didn't recognize it as developer advocacy. When I started creating content, when I became a software engineer, it became a way for me to share what my experience was like, because I did not see a lot of other Black women in technical engineering roles. And I wanted to show people that it was possible. So that's how it started. And then I realized I like teaching, and I don't want people to feel like they have to be a super genius or go to an Ivy League school in order to become a software engineer. And that's what prompted me to start making like tutorials of how I was able to get over learning certain concepts or take the concept out of programming as a whole and help reframe that thinking. And in doing so, I realized I was really building a developer community, which is one of the big pillars of developer advocacy. I was creating content already, which is another big thing. And I was really like putting those things together in order to propel, or my big thing is making developers feel self-sufficient, because I know
Mm,
that we don't as developers like to have to go ask questions and do all the if it can be in the docs, and if I can help you by just putting the information out there and putting it in a way that is useful to you, that's what I'm going to do. So all of those things I was already doing,
mm,
and I was kind of getting to the point as a software engineer where I was like, I could really use a little bit of a change. Like the product process, the get a project, do the project, the PR review. Okay, we're doing it again and again. But I kept finding that there were human aspects to programming that I did not have the time or capacity to dive into. Because as an engineer, one of the most valuable ways that I could contribute was my code. And
Mm,
maybe that meant I didn't get to dive into things like documentation rehauls or maybe creating a little bit of content to make somebody's life a little bit easier because it meant
mm,
that I was taking away from my coding work.
mm.
So I actually was able to do this at HubSpot because I joined HubSpot as a senior front end engineer and a developer advocacy position became available. And I had just mentioned very quickly in passing to my manager that I was interested in the role. And they already knew like the content that I did. And he was very instrumental in just like pushing me to be like, try it. Just try it and see what happens. And I was so scared. But it's the best career decision that I've made so far.
So, what's the most rewarding part of being a developer advocate?
Ooh, I feel like there's a lot of rewarding parts. I still get that dopamine rush of like, oh my gosh, my code works. I constantly am learning, and I'm learning in a way that I will say I'm learning all the time. So sometimes it can be a little bit much, but a lot of times it's learning things that I want to learn so that I can teach other people.
Mm.
And a few days ago, I was in a call and somebody said, "Oh, I watched your YouTube video on the channel and it was able to help me do this thing." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that was so that was so rewarding." Just hearing one person say that like my tutorial or explanation was able to help them in their work, those human aspects are very rewarding to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's something I can relate with. Like, I say like, of course, money is great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gonna hate on money for no reason. But I think a feeling that's very, very close to that is having people learn or get an insight through something that you said or shared or put
Yes.
into the world. I think it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah, that like reaction, just like Roxy said, communities are so necessary and wonderful. I think that community aspect of like both being a community leader and then also like just sitting in the community and watching the community as it works is
Yep,
so rewarding.
it is. It is. This is so beautiful. Hey, Nikhil, thanks for joining. Roxy, I know you've dropped a lot of bombs and
Gems.
gems
Yes.
in the chat. Let me find. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We said this earlier. Yeah, definitely gives more hope. The purpose is the journey, not the destination. So much growth along the way. Absolutely, absolutely. And we gotta have more human interaction, which is huge for DevRel. Yep, yep. I'm definitely advocating for that too.
Yes.
uh, and I think there's a question from Timmy Topway. So I'm curious, what stats indicate more product hiring due to disruption positively? Yeah, I don't have a Canadian stat. I actually did check because again, this is something that I've just heard more like through backdoors. And there's a lot of companies also maturing. So typically, if you think about a company's life cycle, is it's very tech heavy with like the founders essentially being the product leads. But as those companies grow, they tend to try to break out of that pattern because each feature, each division, each department almost takes on a life of its own, and then you
Mhm.
want to grow out each piece, and you really can't have that growth if engineering is the one determining uh everything going on there. There's also like I can't remember, like I saw a tweet now where a company was saying that they're actually going to hire a bunch of PMs. Actually, they said their strategy is to hire two PMs for every one engineer because they believe that the
Oh.
engineers they have, yeah, like it was completely mind blowing to me. Every engineer they have now is essentially 10x. So they need more people who are actually thinking, doing the work behind the scenes, and less of the coding, which
Ah.
is something again. And that's what I think is like we're gonna see so many different paradigms, right, in the spaces that I think are just going to be interesting. Of course, how this pans out, in global data, I don't know what that is like, but specifically, that's just a micro trend that I've seen. And looking at this report and data that I'm talking about, so it says like worldwide product manager jobs are up 5.1 for June 2025. Of course,
Mhm.
I'm sure like you have to account for like all the layoffs and all the craziness. So if it feels like a lot of PMs were out of work, and what are you talking about saying the jobs are there, you have to understand that it's, of course, it may be high, but it's definitely like we've seen a lot higher layoffs. So I think it's going to be some time before it finally catches
Hmm.
up.
Absolutely.
Uh, Hi. Hey, Roxy. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. You're a great teacher, Bree. Yeah, definitely. I've learned so much being on this podcast with you. So if we take it back, let me put you in your full teaching bag, right?
Yeah.
What does it take if we break it down and deconstruct it? I just, I'm driving Uber right now, right? This is picture
Mhm.
me, and I want to become a developer advocate, by, let's say, next December. What do I need to start doing today? Or how would you do it if you were me?
I think step one is it's not required, but I think it helps is being a developer. And the reason I say it's not required is because I know quite a few people who developer advocacy was their first role in tech, but don't think that I would recommend it as your first role necessarily. And here's why. Part of developer advocacy is having a lot of empathy for developers, really understanding who they are as a consumer, but also understanding what problems they have so you can advocate on behalf of them. A big portion of my job is being the liaison between our external developers and the product team at our company. And the only way that I can effectively advocate on a developer's behalf is to understand what their problems are and what their pain points are. I know that a developer is going to have a really big problem with a breaking change that I'm going to put out tomorrow with no warning, but somebody who's not a developer might not have that same experience of knowing, like, oh yeah, sure, one day that's fine. No, 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 no. It's not fine. And actually, you got to give them a lot more time than you think, because naturally people are going to put it on the back burner. They're going to put the project off. They might have questions about it. The other thing is, I need to be able to support them through that process. The best way that I support developers is being able to put myself in their shoes, because I know what it's like.
Mm.
So if somebody wanted to be a developer advocate, I would say start coding, start learning how to code, start working on projects. Also, start thinking about what kind of platforms you would like to share your knowledge on. That's a really big part of it as well, and something that really helped with getting the role that I have now. Are you a technical blogger where maybe you spin up a project? Write a blog post or tutorial that explains how you built that project and like what the components are. How well can you explain what those individual pieces of your project do? Or use something like ChatGPT to just have it ask you questions about it, and you can therefore go about explaining them. Try doing video tutorials. I know everybody has their own platform. Some people are comfortable on video, some people are comfortable on blogs, some you'll find out where your comfort level is and like where you are comfortable. But I think if you're interested, it does not hurt to just try. Nobody says that you have to stay with video if you're really, really not comfortable with it or you feel like you can't get around it. But try to find what that platform is for you, and anchor to it and double down. And then start sharing what you're learning, because that is the real big part about developer advocacy, is advocating. So hop on LinkedIn, share what you're learning, share what your journey is like. Every piece of content that you create doesn't have to be this super curated or super polished version of something. It can just be you asking a question and sharing what your experience was like, or maybe even toying with the pros and cons of a certain technology or method of doing things, but just doing it in a public format where you're still thinking about things, you're not decided, but you're showing what that logic is like and what you're thinking.
Can I add something controversial to what you just
Yeah,
said?
go ahead.
I think anybody who's trying to break into tech should do this. Every single person. One, I think you will find that you learn a lot in the process of sharing what you're learning.
Yes.
And then two, you find a lot of help, right? Someone else might have a perspective about it. And maybe the third one is, I think the biggest thing, especially because when we look at, it's just like what we were saying earlier, right? I'm a YouTuber, right? My reference points are people who are they're uploading a video in an hour and getting 10,000 views, but
Yeah.
that's not everybody.
Right.
So in this case, what that means is your goal is not to become an influencer. No, your goal is not to
Ooh.
sell a product. Your
Yes.
goal is, here I am, here's what I learned, and this is what I figured out. It
Yes.
might not even have a conclusion, but this is what it is, because I think there's something so powerful about that. And just like you said, you've said something that I found to be very, very interesting. You don't say caption, you say SEO.
Yes.
That is, it seems very deliberate, and I love it because if they can't search and find you, you don't exist.
Right?
So doing SEO, understanding keywords is so important. You don't want to do all of that content that then doesn't get found.
I'm
So you
telling
have
you.
to be very intentional. Are you trying to become a software engineer? Figure out a way to write software engineer into the post that you're writing. Because if you have 10 of those, and hiring somebody who's early career, and I can find 10 posts about you, or maybe I even find one that then leads me to your entire page, and I'm like, wow, I know this person
Yes.
hasn't had a formal job, but this is really good stuff. I definitely want to hear what they think and how their thought process is working. So that is so
Absolutely.
important.
You have to be so intentional. And I think I could do a whole TED talk on the difference between building in public or documenting your journey and becoming an influencer because they are not the same thing. Your goal does not have to be to gain 1 million followers or gain as many followers as you can. But I will say, as a developer advocate, something that is important is to show metrics. And for us, a lot of times metrics can be a little bit tricky. So maybe you start doing things like the SEO where you can say, hey, you know what? I started out and I did not have any SEO plans at all. And then I started doing these small things to put software engineer or coding into my post. And it's really about finding your people. And you're able to start boosting that engagement and engaging with other people, because if you want people to engage with you, you should also engage with them back. But I think the numbers really come once you start to find who your people are. And something or somebody that is actually really good at sharing her journey is Roxy. She's really great at that, both on Twitter and on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, shout out to Roxy, and she just shared another gem. At some point, I think I might have to pay you because it's impossible you're doing all this all this gems for free. But thank
Yes.
you for sharing. He says you're the brand that you're selling, and that is the biggest thing. I think everything in the world of AI has become commodity.
Hmm.
Knowledge is commodity. Um, Even the ability to gain knowledge is commodity. Skills a lot of the time are going to become commodity. The thing that nobody else has that you are is you. And it's so funny, like how we
Yes.
have so many unique stories. It's like, just like I said, I've had multiple patterns. I got in, like, people who say, like, they got into interested in tech because of video game. I've had a ton. People
Hmm.
who um maybe were coding even before they went to college. People who didn't go to college. All
Hmm.
of these different things. You know what I've not found? I've not found a unique person who has your exact experience, who works at your job, and who has your perspective of going into
Exactly.
DevRel the way you did, right? And that is the thing. It's like that will always be brand new, right? Being introverted, or at least some part of that, and still being a developer, a DevRel. Like, it almost
Mhm.
doesn't make any sense, right? But that's your story, and that's the beauty of it. And what makes that important is the fact of that connection. How so many people out there feel seen just because you are who you are. And that is the beauty of it that I feel like most people don't want to lose. It's like you're a one of one. No matter how
Exactly.
many versions of that has been created, no matter how many variants of that exist, you're a one of one. And giving your story life, figuring out a way to still share what is uniquely you, that is what will never get old. And that is what even AI can never take away from you.
You know what? That is so true. I just went to the computer museum and I've been to this museum quite a few times and I love going to go look at the old technology. It's just fascinating and fun to me. But this time I got a tour and I got a tour from somebody who is very knowledgeable and well versed, not just about the technology, but about the human stories behind the technology. And when I tell you, it was like I was visiting for the first time and I was on the hook. I was listening for 2 hours, just listening to not how the technology got created or what the technology was, but the people behind it and like why they did it and what the risks were and what their personal story and journey behind that was. Everybody can get on LinkedIn or get on YouTube and talk about JavaScript, but it's your understanding, it's your journey, it's how. Let me see it through your eyes. Let me see how you understand JavaScript and like what this looked like for you. So yeah, it's the people. You are the only person who is like you, who has the journey that you're on, and your journey is really what's going to sell you and your brand, like Roxy said, as a person. And it also gets people to know you. And people, when you're thinking about like, oh, eventually I want to get hired, which is typically what people post on LinkedIn, or people want to be remembered. People are going to remember people because people hire people. You want somebody to go on and say, oh, I know that's Bree. I know exactly what that is. I see what she posts. I would love to work with her as a person. And that personality and that joy that you bring that is uniquely yours is so important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like you put that so beautifully. We got Janet in the building. We'll go Roxy. Yeah, go Roxy. That's all we've been saying. That's all we've been saying. And yeah, you're welcome, Roxy. You've been so amazing on this podcast today. And I want to ask one question before the final one. See, technical things have been not my best friend. I'll say that, right? I struggle learning technical concepts because I've not, especially when it comes to coding specifically, right? If it's abstract or things I can learn, not so much. But I guess I just don't have the patience for sitting in front of a computer and just doing that. So, what is your tip for someone who struggles with that, like I do?
Ooh, I think it would be try to find a way that is approachable to you. And I know we talked about this a little bit with the audiobooks. Something that I've talked about a little bit more is I'm dyslexic. So sitting there reading documentation for me or specifically reading books has never been my forte. And sometimes tutorials can get a little bit lengthy or a little bit wordy. So using things like Notebook LM, which you can like put in multiple resources and it will generate a podcast for you so I can just listen to something. Or the other thing I like to do is use things like ChatGPT to take technical concepts out of the realm of technology and relate it to something else that I'm interested in. So if I hate data structures and algorithms. I will say it till I can't stand it. I always have to go back and review like so much. But when I do go back and review, I'm like, hey, chat, tell me how to, I don't know, reverse a linked list, but tell me how it would happen in a video game. And then it'll create like a little summary for me. And I'm like, oh, I can read stuff about video games. And then it will like relate and it'll click to me. And that will get me hooked. So I think it's all also about finding a low barrier to entry for you, because once you get over that first barrier, a lot of times, or the, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do this, or like the jitteriness of needing to actually get into it, like it's okay. But I think finding the right resources and how you learn best is typically the thing that usually works for me. And also don't feel like you have to do it on your own. And now that we have resources to do so, utilize them to the fullest extent. You can use AI to generate the code for you, but make sure that you're constantly asking, like, how does this work and why does this work this way?
Mm. I think you've even dropped like multiple major keys. The biggest one was you can actually learn your own way using AI. Like that
Mhm.
takes all the barriers away, at least most of them, right? Like, so if you care about cooking, use cooking terminologies to learn it. Let you cook, right?
Right.
Whatever it is that you like, use that. One final audience question, and then I want to give your channel a shout out and then let you promote whatever else it is that you want people to check out. But so question from Nikhil: how do you keep up to date, or how do you update yourself with the latest tech trends?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Super important, especially as a developer advocate, because a lot of times I have to be on the bleeding edge of what's happening because our developers are on the bleeding edge of what's happening. And I will say I used to feel like it was a really big funnel where there was so much coming in and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to fully invest in or where I wanted to turn a lot of times. But I personally give myself a domain that I want to dive deeper into, and it makes it a little bit less challenging. I also try to build time into my work schedule to make sure that I'm upskilling. So maybe that's like on Fridays when things are a little bit more chill, maybe taking like the ending half of the day and doing a course, or maybe I'm going out and looking for articles on like trending or emerging technologies, and I bake it into my calendar and like bake it into my routine. That way I can't miss it and I have to do it. But I think part of it is also having the discipline to like show up for yourself and recognize technology isn't stagnant. And
Mm,
today it is moving very, very quickly. You don't have to know everything about emerging technologies, but try to pick one domain that interests you for some reason or another and just see where it takes you. Maybe you do, I like front end masters. So sometimes I'll go on there and do a course, whether it's sometimes like a refresher course, just to make sure that I'm up to date with technologies that I'm currently using. Or
mm.
maybe I'm going to do something brand new and I'll just time box myself to 4 hours and see what I can learn and what I can build during that time and take it from there.
Mm, that is so important, right? And I think if I could add anything to that, it would be like if you could also subscribe to like industry newsletters and things like that,
Yes.
so the information even comes to you. But all of the things that you said is absolutely A1, like everything else. But yeah, go check out Bites of Bree on YouTube. She does a lot of amazing content. But over to you, Bree. What do you want people to find? Do you have a new movie coming out, a new video
Oh,
game? What should they check out?
listen, if I had a movie, I guarantee you it would be a box office flop. But you can catch me on like Instagram and TikTok at Bites of Brie, and I am on YouTube as well. And I think LinkedIn, and that's most of the places where I tend to post. I post a little bit more on short form because I that's the place where I feel like I get to be most of myself. A little bit of personality, a little bit of tech, a little bit of life, a little bit of everything.
Shout out to everybody who's joined us tonight. Biggest one, of course, to Bree. But again, can't forget the amazing Roxy. Thank you for rocking with us, Roxy. I know it
Yes.
doesn't
Thank you all
rhyme.
so
I'm
much for
sorry.
being here.
And then Derek, I know you came in. Well, you probably been watching the whole time, but thanks for dropping the fire emojis. Thanks everyone for all of the amazing love that you guys have been showing. This is great. Oh, Derek also had a shout out for you.
Thank you.
She does amazing content. I've been following her for YouTube over a year now. Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you so
So
much.
a lot of great reviews already. So that's why more reason why you guys should check her out. That's been the show for tonight. We'll be back again next week with another amazing guest, talking, render ATL, a lot
Hey.
of other interesting stuff. You definitely do not want to miss it. This has been, working in tech. I think this is 76. Wow, we're running
Love it.
closer to that 100 number now. I'm really excited. See
I
you
love it.
guys next week.